Hello boyos, Rich Boy J here back here with another video, and this is going to be another episode of Your Questions Answered. If you're unfamiliar with the series, this is a Q&A series where I answer your questions, so if you want to see one of your questions answered, leave it in the comment section below. Make sure it is Lego, Star Wars, or Lego Star Wars related, and then check back next week to see if you make the cut. The first question this week is going to come from Squidman, aka Skinned Ham, apparently, and he asks, what was the biggest design change when building a MOC that took a long time to fix/change? This is a really good question. I want to say that for the most part, when it comes to me building, I'm pretty deliberate. Like once I decide on something, it takes a lot for me to make like big sweeping changes to MOCs. The one thing that does come to mind as something that took me a long time to, I guess, change around was with Kamino actually. I think originally the plan was to have the MOC a bit taller than it actually was. And after looking at it, I realized I didn't want to have as much height compared to how wide it was. So I had to like basically shrink the whole thing down by maybe like 4 or 5 studs, nothing too dramatic, but this involved me having to like shorten all the walls that I made for it, as well as make some structural changes. And just the way the build is connected, it was super repetitive to do this. Now, as for the thing that took me the longest to fix, hands down, has to be Snoke's throne room that I built for Starkiller Base, mostly because when I originally built it, I don't know why, but I did not build it in such a way that was transportable whatsoever. So that day it came to take it to the convention, like it just fell completely apart. And this was compounded upon by the fact that all the rock like pieces or builds that I had that kind of made the big ball in the back. And this was compounded upon by the fact that the big rock module sections that I had that kind of line the back walls, they were using clips to connect to the wall, but it had been sitting there with those clips for so long that the clips got super loose. So when I was trying to put them back together at the convention, one, it's like a really difficult puzzle. Like you have to figure out which shapes fit where they're supposed to go, because I just had a bunch of miscellaneous rock shapes, but then also the clips were super weak, so I would just have so many of them that would continuously pop out. Of all the things that I personally worked on to make Starkiller Base happen at that convention, Snoke's throne room was by far the one that took the longest amount of time. Next question comes from the 23rd Radio Tower 41. He says, hey, another question for you, Jay. For your MOCs, have you tried building smaller weapons like E-Webs or RPGs? If so, I'd love to see them. Honestly, I can't say that this is something that I have attempted. I'm really not a big weapons guy when it comes to Lego. Like, I'm a big fan of the custom guns and I'll buy them just to make my MOCs look more accurate, but I can't say I've ever been super motivated to build my own custom weapons. Like the Lego blasters are pretty much good enough for me, and if I need anything more advanced than that, I might go the custom route. But with Kamino, I am going to have to build a particular scene where a clone does use an RPG to take care of business, so maybe at that point you might see me either look for a custom or try my hand at building a custom weapon. Next question comes from AV_JC. He says, hey Jay, big fan, love to see a bigger name in the community to be a diehard for the sequel trilogy. Hey ho ho, do not accuse me of being a sequel fan. I am a Star Wars Episode 7 and Episode 8 fan. I am not a sequel fan. And speaking of, do you think with the new Rey Jedi Order film on the way and the anniversary of The Force Awakens coming sooner rather than later, it's going to be in 2 years, guys, that's ridiculous. Do you think we'll be seeing a return to sequel-related sets soon? There's so much left to cover, and now with 18 plus sets, so many new opportunities, a diorama of Han's death on Starkiller would be amazing, I think. Honestly, I don't see Lego doing a set exclusively dedicated to Han Solo's death. That just seems like a bit much. I mean, I don't know, maybe someone tell me if I'm off base with that, but I don't see them doing like a diorama specifically centered around, you know, Han Solo talking to Kylo Ren on that balcony, because I mean that's just synonymous with his death, and I don't know. I don't see them doing that. Maybe there's another example of this where Lego has done a scene that is very specifically dedicated to someone dying, but I don't know. I don't see that set happening. As for whether or not I see sequel sets happening, you know, again, sometime soon, I feel like they probably will do something for the 10th anniversary of The Force Awakens. I know that, I guess, Revenge of the Sith also has an anniversary that year, so maybe they might be looking more towards that, but I think that, you know, at some point we are going to see more sequel sets happen, especially if the TV shows slow down by that point. And I'm not really sure we have an indication that they will, but if they do, you know, Mando might wrap up. I imagine, you know, Bad Batch will wrap up, and maybe some of these other things. We won't have as many TV shows going on. Maybe I mean, I don't know. I could be totally wrong here. But I do definitely see them at some point revisiting more of those Disney era Star Wars properties to do sets based off of. As for like the Rey Jedi Order film, I don't know if this will necessarily like incentivize them to do more sequel sets per se. Like I don't think this makes it more likely that we'll get sets from episodes 7 through 9, but I think that they will absolutely do sets to complement that film. And if those sets are kind of in line with what we got for the sequels, that'd be great. If it's something completely different, I think that'd be awesome as well. Exitol asks, if you could fly any Star Wars ship in real life, which would you choose? This is a good question. When I first read this, I'm gonna be honest, the first one that came to my mind was the Naboo Starfighter. It is just such a clean, sleek looking ship. It's one of those ones that even back when I wasn't a big Star Wars fan, that design always stuck with me from when I saw the Phantom Menace in theaters as a young kid. So definitely gotta go with the Naboo Starfighter. And it's probably really easy to pilot considering we saw like an 8-year-old kid do it in the Phantom Menace. So maybe that might be in my favor as well. Probably gotta throw the Republic gunship in there just out of respect. That's my favorite Star Wars vehicle. It runs out of ammo surprisingly quickly, but hopefully we won't run into those kind of problems when I pilot it. And then finally, I guess I'll throw the Millennium Falcon in there. Once again, just out of respect. The Falcon's just so freaking cool, and I'd love to sit in that cockpit and get to fly that thing around the galaxy. Question number 5 comes from Carter's Figs. He says, why do you think voice acting worked for a game such as Lego Batman 2, but didn't work for Lego Star Wars? This is a really fascinating question. I actually love this question. And I had to think a little bit about it because I did actually play Lego Batman 2. It's like the only like non-Star Wars Lego game that I've played all the way through. And I loved it. It was a really good game. The open world aspect of it, I feel, really worked for Gotham City. And I think about it more and more, and it's like, dang, like a lot of those elements that I liked about that game, I didn't like so much about Lego Star Wars. I feel like a part of it probably is nostalgia. When I first played Lego Star Wars, I played it in a very specific way with how that game initially was. Going into Batman, I had no point of reference. It was my first like superhero game. So I guess maybe I was just inherently more open to it being different. But as for the voice acting, I do think there is a reason beyond just, you know, nostalgia that it works for Lego Batman, but not Lego Star Wars. With Lego Star Wars, you have a story that's basically being retold to you through Lego. For the most part, people who play that game know what's happening, and they're just there to see the story retold with Lego. So I think that there was a lot of charm in how they were able to use, you know, not words, but the actions and the expressions of the minifigures to convey the emotions and the tone of the scenes. There's something just really interesting about that. Whereas with Batman, you are, I mean, I could be wrong on this, but I'm pretty sure the story being told is a new story, just something they exclusively came up with for the video game. So it's not like you have expectations or you know what's going on. The information that you're being fed kind of has to be fed to you with words. Otherwise, you maybe wouldn't get the full context of what's going on. So I think that that's the biggest reason why it definitely works for Batman 2, but maybe not so much for Lego Star Wars. Next question, and this is the one I really wanted to talk about. This is by Star Wars Studios 9374. He says, what do you think the prime year of Lego was? Personally, for me, I'd say the early 2010s were nearly perfect with some of those later Clone Wars sets. I'm assuming by this question, you're specifically going to talk about just Lego Star Wars. And if not, for the purposes of this video and just my own Lego knowledge, I'm going to narrow the scope for Lego Star Wars. So I'm going to answer, what do I think the prime year for Lego Star Wars was? I think obviously 2013 and 2014 are both big contenders. We got a lot of banger sets in that era, and I cannot dispute that whatsoever. But when it comes to my personal preferences, I think 2015 was my favorite year of LEGO Star Wars. I like 2015 so much because I think it did have a lot of carryover of those really cool sets and ideas that they were doing in 2013 and 2014, like, you know, getting 4 battle packs a year, and some of those really cool prequel sets. I think they kind of extended a little bit into 2015. But also what LEGO did so well was balance. And I think this is something that we severely lack pretty much since 2020. It's just a good, well-rounded assortment of LEGO Star Wars sets, a good, well-rounded assortment of play sets, especially. But in 2015, LEGO was pretty much tasked with, you know, making sets that were based around all other eras of Star Wars, as well as the new films that were coming out. And I think that they balanced it so well. If you just look at what we got in that year alone, we got prequel sets, we got original trilogy sets, we got sets from Star Wars Rebels, and we got sets from the new Star Wars movie, The Force Awakens. I think what LEGO excelled with so well in this year was they had something for every type of Star Wars fan. No matter what you were interested in, you had not just one option, but multiple options. And I think that's something that we desperately need to see more of now. I mean, if you're a sequel fan, what options do you have? If you're a prequel fan, you have maybe a few more options than the sequel fans, but even on shelves right now, there are not very many prequel sets that you can buy. If you're an original trilogy fan, you have a decent amount of options, even though most of them are dominated by 18 plus overpriced sets. Now, if you're into Clone Wars or the more recent TV shows, then you're in a pretty good position. But I don't think it should be that way. I don't think that it should be so overwhelmingly represented by one thing. And I think 2015 was the ultimate indicator of how to handle this. Yes, The Force Awakens was a very big deal. Force Awakens was pretty much the biggest thing that happened to Star Wars since the original trilogy. But that year didn't feel dominated by The Force Awakens. It wasn't like you're either a fan of The Force Awakens or good luck finding something you're interested in. There were just so many options for everyone, and I think that's what made it a fantastic year to be a fan, because not only did you have so many representations of the old stuff that you might be into, but you also had a really solid lineup of sets for the new thing that was coming out. The final question is gonna come from Tyrant18Able. He says, what LEGO army do you really want, but you don't have a lot of right now? This is a really good question. Now, I'm not sure how well you guys know my armies, but my First Order army is by far the biggest out of anything that I have. And I have a good amount of Resistance stuff. I think I have a decent amount of Rebel stuff as well. And while I do have a good amount of Stormtroopers, I don't have a good amount of the most updated Stormtroopers. So definitely gonna have to take care of that. But I think every other Imperial troop, I got a good amount of. Now, as for clones, my favorite clone is the Phase 1 clone, just plain white. And I have a good amount of those. I got, you know, a considerable amount of those clone packs, basically in preparation for Kamino. And I got a pretty decent mix of Phase 2 clones. Like, I got my share of 501st battle packs. I got some of those foil packs for the 212 clones. Honestly, would love to have quite a bit more updated Kashyyyk troopers, so that would be a candidate. But I think when it comes to the top army that I have the least amount of, that I would really love to have a lot more of right now, I feel like I'm kind of tied between either Geonosians or dark orange / sand red Geonosis battle droids. I think these two are pretty much, other than the all-white Phase 1 clones, these are the forces that you see in the highest quantities. And as a mock builder who someday would want to build Geonosis, I'm going to need so many of these clones. So when it comes to a battle pack, for example, that I think would be ideal for me, I think a Geonosis battle pack would just rock my world. That would be so fantastic. I would love it if LEGO were to put Geonosians as well as Geonosis B1 battle droids in a battle pack so I can collect an insane amount of them and I can be good to go whenever the inevitable Geonosis mock happens. But I think that's a good question though to you guys. If you had to pick one army that you could have like thousands of troops of right now in your collection, which army would you guys go for? I guess I'd say you gotta pick one specific troop that you'd have like 1,000 of. Let me know in the comment section below. But that's all I got for you guys today. So if you enjoy what I do, go ahead and support the video by hitting the like button, support the channel by smashing that subscribe button. Don't forget to put your questions in the comments below, and I'll be back again very soon.